Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, Atlanta. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. We are talking about enlightenment, inspiration, and empowerment today. That's what I want to do for you. Because as scripture reminds us, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And we have so much power in what we say and in what we do. I have an entrepreneur, a businessman, and an author all on the line today in one person, and that one person is John-stolpe. And I am so happy that he is here. He is representing his wonderful group called the Stretched Men Group. So let me tell you a little bit more about John. John is an operations manager for a construction firm in the Philadelphia area. He has a passion for family, leadership development, missions, and personal growth. John has a heart for providing homes and hope to widows and orphans in Guatemala. He has a dream of building 100 plus homes in Guatemala. That is such a wonderful ambition. John is the founder and lead facilitator for the Stretched Men Group. And of course, you can find them at stretchedmengroup.com. John writes about life's stretchy march. Totally messed up. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, Atlanta. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester, where we enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. Well, today we are talking about stretching yourself. That's right. Are you stretching yourself? Are you all that you could actually be? Well, John-stolpe is going to talk about that very thing. He is out of the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, and he's going to tell us not only about his group, but about his books. So let me tell you a little bit more about John. John is an operations manager for a construction firm in the Philadelphia area. He has a passion for family, leadership development, missions, and personal growth. John has a heart for providing homes and hope to widows and orphans in Guatemala. He has a dream of building 100 plus homes in Guatemala. Well, John is the founder and lead facilitator for the Stretched Men Group, and that is stretchedmengroup.com. John writes about life's stretch marks on his popular blog, John-stolpe Stretched. And of course, you can find that at John, and it's stolpe.com. His second book, Rooftop Reflections, Missional Thoughts of an Ordinary Guy, is an extraordinary place. And it is set to have been released in the winter of 2017. So that means it is already available for you to purchase. And of course, you can find out more about his book at rooftopreflections.com. Well, if you're not stretching, you're not really living. And as Christians, we have an opportunity to spur each other through our businesses, through the things that we do in life, and just the things that we do as we share. And as part of our conversation, we're going to talk about 7 ways that you can stretch yourself. And John is going to definitely share some ways that he has helped to stretch others. Well, without any further ado, let's go on and bring John on. Hello, John. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
I am doing fantastic, Dr. Angela. Thank you so much for having me here on your show today.
Thank you. Well, I love it when people are able to present a challenge, something that's going to help you. Personal growth, I think we can all definitely take some notes when it comes to personal growth, because if you're not learning, to me, then you're not truly living, because every day is an opportunity to learn a little bit more and to encourage the people that are around you. So stretching, that's something that I love that you've included in the title of your group, and you talk about it when you're explaining about this walk of faith that you're on. Can you tell us a little bit more? What is stretching and how did you come up with this concept?
Well, I am now almost 6'6" in the height department. And when I started my junior year of high school, I was actually only 5'6". So I've grown nearly a foot since that time frame. I'm quite a bit older than that now, but somewhere along that line, my friends started calling me Stretch because every day they saw me, it seemed like I was growing, physically growing taller and taller. And that was a nickname that went with me for a long time. And when I was setting up my blog over 10 years ago, I was trying to come up with a theme for it. And a friend of mine encouraged me to think back on some of the things that really represented who I was. And the more I thought about it, stretch really was something that had come to define me, not just physically, but it's something that I really live by. I truly believe that we are meant to continue to grow and to stretch and to learn new things. And so I use that as a metaphor that goes across a lot of what I do. So I'm stretching myself in my workplace where I'm leading a team of 60 people in the construction world. I'm stretching myself at my church where my wife and I are leading a dynamic marriage group for couples who are interested in taking their marriages to the next level. And I'm stretching myself in various ways, including, as you mentioned, in the Stretched Men group, where I have the opportunity to plug into other guys and to encourage them to take that next step, to stretch forward and become better men, better husbands, better fathers, better leaders. And it's been a neat journey for me. I will be interested to see where the whole stretch theme takes me as I continue to move forward in my life.
Now, I definitely want to spend some time talking about the men's group that you provide for the men in the area, but I want to kind of back up a little bit, and you mentioned how you like to try to stretch others, that you really kind of challenge people to think outside the box, if you will. What are some ways that you're able to do that, or what have you found to be successful for you in challenging others to stretch themselves?
Well, there's a lot of things. I think part of it is just living transparently and sharing some of the goods, the bads, and the uglies of what goes on in my life. And for those who have been following along on my blog, they certainly get a chance to see that. But for me, I've kind of narrowed it down to 7 things, and I know you mentioned that in the introduction, but there's 7 things that I really think that are applicable to helping all of us stretch. And when I have the chance to speak to others or to share more about the stretch theme, these are 7 things that have really come to mean a lot in how I like to be stretched, how I realize I need to be stretched, but also how I can encourage others to be stretched. And so it really starts with I think it's called an acronym. So if you're taking notes, what you can do is write a letter down the page. So start with S and then T and then R-E-T-C-H, and it spells stretch. Well, each of those letters stands for something. And so the first S in that stretch stands for still yourself. And I don't know if you're like me, but here in the Northeast, where I lived up near Philadelphia, people go and move and live at such a fast pace. And we are always doing something. We are busy people. And the reality is that we're actually called to still ourselves. You know, the Bible talks about be still and know that I am God. And unfortunately, I think many of us have gotten into this place where we don't even know how to quiet ourselves. I think if we're really going to stretch, we need to be able to sit back and suck the marrow out of life by being still and seeing how God is working around us. Does that make sense to you?
It does. It does. Like you said, we're so used to being so busy that when we have to sit still, many people even become uncomfortable in that quiet, or uncomfortable in having to be still because we're so used to moving, or our phones distracting us, or something going on. That is a great way to challenge yourself, to just be still.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I mean, the phones is a big distraction these days. It seems like everybody's got to have their phone in their hand, and they're checking their Facebook status, or they're checking their email, or checking whatever else on there all the time. And the reality is sometimes we just need to put that down and be able to still ourselves. So that's the first S in how I like to encourage people to stretch. The first T that you come to in stretch, I like to practice the discipline of thanksgiving, being thankful. The T is for being thankful. And again, I think it's a discipline that we have maybe fallen away from to some degree in our culture. But writing a handwritten thank you note, I like to practice Thank You Thursday, and actually write a handwritten thank you note every Thursday as a way to express my thanks to others around me. In fact, if you walk through my office, you will see a lot of my thank you notes hanging in the various cubicles in our office space. So there's a certain aspect of being thankful to other people for what they're doing to impact your life, and I think that that's something that we miss out on. But there's also the key importance of being thankful and really being grateful for the way God's working in our lives. And that is something that we sometimes miss. There are those people in our world who are negative about things, or don't necessarily have that positive outlook that it seems like you have. But I think that being more intentional about our times for Thanksgiving is a really important way to stretch ourselves and to stretch those around us.
You really hit on a point there, because it seems like people are so connected with the negative as opposed to the positive, just looking at that glass as half empty as opposed to half full, and it's like, come on, let's be optimistic sometimes, people. Let's try to be a little more positive, a little more thankful. And there's nothing wrong with, I love how you say, just, have a little more thanksgiving or a little more thankfulness in your day-to-day life. That's definitely going to help.
So then we move on to R, and the R for me stands for taking time to reflect. Reflection is a lost discipline, and it's something that I think is really important. Being still is one thing, and taking time to be thankful is another thing, but really stopping and reflecting on what is going on in our lives, and taking time to jot that down and to take note of that. I have a journal I carry with me everywhere, and it's an opportunity to write down basic details that I come across on a day-to-day basis. But it's also a place where I can really reflect on some of the things happening to me as well. Some of those things get transferred over to my blog, and I would say that that's another place where I reflect on how God is working in my life. It's a place where I have a chance to reflect on the stretch marks, so to speak, that I come across every day. But we need to do that. I think that we miss out on really capitalizing on what's going on in our lives and learning from those experiences when we forget to take that time to reflect and to note what we've learned as a result of the experiences we're having every day.
Nothing like reflection. Well, we are almost at that time to take a break. I know, listeners, it's just getting good, and you're like, but wait, I know we need to take a really quick break, but don't worry, we will definitely come back and finish this acronym of stretch. Just before we do that, John, please remind everyone, where can they find you online, or how can they get in contact with you?
Probably the best place to find me is on my blog at john-stolpe.com. That my name is Jon. It's spelled Jon, so you have to go JONSTOLTE.com. That's really my home base, and I know that we'll share a couple of other links along the way in the rest of our conversation.
Alrighty, listeners, don't you go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. Today we are talking about personal growth. Are you stretching yourself? And are you challenging those around you to stretch themselves as well? And I mean stretch in a good way. We are talking to entrepreneur and author john-stolpe, and he is out of the Pennsylvania area, and he is really telling us some really great things that we can do to stretch ourselves. Personal growth, folks, who doesn't need it? We all can take notes on what he's talking about today. So, John, please continue. We were talking about the acronym of STRETCH. So we've done STR, and I believe you were going to start with the letter E.
Sure. So E stands for engage in key relationships. Engaging in key relationships is a real important aspect of stretching. I believe that we were meant to live in community. We were meant to do life with other people. And when we fail to do that, we miss out on a key opportunity to have others stretch us and to be stretched by other people. The Bible in Hebrews 10, verse 24 and 25 says, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." I believe that we were meant for community, and plugging into key relationships is important. I'll talk a little bit more about community when we get to the C, but key relationships for me are making sure that I'm really investing in those who mean the most to me. Mm-hmm. So that means my wife. I want to make sure that I'm not leaving her the leftovers. I'm not giving her my leftovers, but I'm giving her what she really deserves. That means my kids. I have two kids who are on the older end of their teenagehood. My daughter's about to turn 20, and my son is finishing up his senior year in high school. But that time goes by in a blink, and I want to make sure that I'm really engaging with them. And it's not just a matter of us sitting down at the table and wolfing down dinner after work and school and then running to our next activity. It's really taking that time to sit down and find out how our days were and what struggles or what praises that we have to offer for the things that we've experienced as part of life. We miss out on that if we fail to engage in those key relationships, those people who mean the most to us. And I don't know about you, but I know that I don't want to reach the end of my life and realize that I hadn't invested in those people who mean the world to me.
I agree with you. I love how you said that, we need to make sure that our family doesn't get the leftovers. That is so important. And so many times it does end up being our spouse that just kind of gets the 10% that we have left over at the end of the day. And our poor kids, I started laughing because it's like, yeah, how was school? Great. Okay, off to the next event, and it's just like, wow. Before you know it, they are graduating, and it is so important that we do spend that time. Thank you for that reminder about key relationships and being engaged with our family as well as with other people.
You're welcome. So that moves us to the second T, I believe, if my spelling is correct. And that T for me means trying something new. And I think that it's easy to fall into the trap of routine. And routines are a good thing in a lot of ways. I'm a person of routine. I don't like it when things change too drastically around me. Mm-hmm. But I also believe that if we don't keep our eyes open and we don't try new things, we may be missing out on the blessings that God has in front of us as well. And that kind of applies to my Guatemala experience. Mm-hmm. I was very afraid to go to Guatemala in 2012 when I was first asked to go to Guatemala. But through a lot of counsel and prayer and encouragement from others, I decided I was going to take that leap of faith and try something new. Mm-hmm. And that something new, that leap of faith, has led to something that has dramatically changed my life. I've been back there 5 times to Guatemala. I've developed a vision for building a ton of houses there, hopefully before I die. And I've developed some amazing relationships with people who I have absolutely fallen in love with, who I never would have met if I didn't try something new. That new thing for you as a listener may be trying a new restaurant or a new grocery store, or it may mean trying a new relationship or a new conversation with somebody who you've never met before. But I would challenge you to get out of the routine of life from time to time and do something that shakes your world up a little bit in a good way.
Do something different. I like that.
Yeah, it's just, I think the Bible talks about today is a new day. And I think that with that are new opportunities every day. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. And I sing that song, as I sing that verse and that song in my head, I think about the newness that God has for us each and every day. I want to make sure that I get the chance to experience that. And if I am so stuck in my routines, and again, some routines are very good. I think routines have helped to shape me and be who I am. But I also don't want to miss out on taking a risk every once in a while. Sociologist Tony Campolo did a survey several years ago of, I believe it was 50 95-year-olds. And he asked them, if you had to do life all over again, what would you do differently? And the 3 main responses that came back were, 1, I would take more risks. And I think that that's part of trying something new. The other 2 things, just so I don't miss them, are I would take more time to reflect. And we mentioned that when we talked earlier about taking time to reflect. And then the third thing was that they would want to do more to leave a legacy. And I think we'll hit on that by the time we finish the STRETCH acronym and how we can leave a legacy with our lives. So we've done STRET, and then we come to C, and C stands for plug into community. And I kind of mentioned that briefly when I read the verse from Hebrews. But up in the Northeast, it's common for people to come home from work, to press the button in their car that opens their garage door, to drive into their garage, and then as soon as their car's in the garage, close the garage door, and then they walk in the house. And then in the morning, they do it in reverse, and they go down the driveway, and they never plug into their neighbors. They never really plug into their community. And we're missing out on a big part of stretching ourselves and stretching others when we don't get involved with our communities. There are a lot of people out there who will benefit from our involvement in their lives, but we will also get some major stretching from others as we allow ourselves to be part of their lives as well. And I want to challenge the listeners that if they're stuck, if they're stuck feeling lonely, or if their schedules don't allow for them to do something with their community, to really take a serious look at it and find a way that you can somehow get involved with your community. Now, that could be serving somewhere in your community. It could be like my son is just finishing up his time as a Boy Scout. And, that's a great opportunity for him to be involved with community, but it's been also a great opportunity for me to plug into some people in the community who I may not have met otherwise.
It really is. My son was a Boy Scout as well, and it really and truly, it teaches them great skills, but it also, like you said, it stretches them, and it allows them to make new friends with perhaps people that they wouldn't have normally have been friends with, or it allows them to be in an environment in which they may not usually have been in that particular environment. Like if you don't have camping parents, you may have never gone camping, as a kid. But thanks to the Scouts, you're able to do a little bit of traveling and hiking and camping and really having that opportunity to, like you said, to kind of still yourself and to be able to reflect and learn about other people and how to interact. It really is a really great program.
Yeah, it's been good for my son, and but that's just one of the examples of the ways that our family has plugged into community, and I'm so grateful that we have. Do we have time for me to go to the H, the last letter in the acronym?
We do. We have about 3 minutes before we need to go to break or so. So yes, sir. If not, we can always come back and finish.
Okay. So for me, this is where it all comes together. And the H for me stands for help others. I think, you spend a lot of time at the beginning of that acronym reflecting on yourself and being inward focused to a degree. And then you start to look to your key relationships and you look to your community. But really where the rubber meets the road is where we turn that outward and we start to develop a discipline of helping other people. And when we are putting ourselves out there and helping other people, it's amazing what happens, because I have found that every time I have gotten involved in helping somebody, whether it's an organized thing or whether it's been something that's just spur of the moment, that I'm the one who actually gets stretched. I'm actually the one who gets a lot of fulfillment out of that. And helping others doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go overseas to Guatemala, although that's a big passion of mine. There are ways that you can get involved right in your community. My wife and I started an organization kind of through our church called HOPE, and it stands for Helping Other People Everywhere. And we're a group of families who get together twice a month, and the first time we get together in the month, we have dinner at our house and we have a devotion and do a small service project for something in the community. But then that second time of the month that we get together, we actually go out into the community and serve together with our kids and with other families in a way that's practical and shows God's love in a practical way. And I know that we've helped a ton of people over the years. We just had our 7th anniversary of that group. And I'm thankful for the lives that we've been able to touch through that organization. But I'm also thankful for the ways in which those organizations, and especially the people we have served, have touched our lives. And I think in order to really stretch yourself, you have to get outside your shell and look for ways to help others.
You really do, and I don't think people realize how fulfilling it really is when you help someone else. That there is just a sense of gratitude that just really comes over you, and it's such a humbling experience to know that you really can make a difference. That one person, how many people say, oh, I'm just one voice, or I'm just one person. What can I possibly do to make a difference? And it's like your voice does count, your actions really do matter, and it really can help someone else who genuinely needs your assistance. Well, listeners, we need to take a break, but don't worry, we are definitely coming back and talking to John more about stretching not only yourself, but those around you as well. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. We are talking about personal growth today, folks. And who doesn't need to know more when it comes to personal growth? Personal growth is something that it's ever changing. We're always developing and growing, or at least we should be. And today our keyword is stretch. Are you stretching yourself? And that's what John is talking about today. So John, if you could please, we mentioned in the very beginning that you have a men's group that's called the Stretched Men's Group. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. It's actually a mastermind group for men, and it meets virtually. So I have people in the group from the state of Washington. I've had people in the group from California, people from Georgia, of all places, and some people from Pennsylvania. It's the mastermind concept is basically you're the average of the 5 people who you hang around with the most. And if you want to raise the bar on your average, if you want to raise who you are, then you're going to try to hang out with people who are going to help raise your average. Mm-hmm. And so I've come across a lot of men over the years who have looked for my help to be a mentor or to just provide some wisdom based on my experience. And I'm humbled by those requests. I'm honored and humbled. But the reality is I'm only one guy, and I'm not sure how I can connect with all the guys who have come to me with that kind of a request. And as I was wrestling through that with another group of people that I'm involved with, they suggested that I try developing a mastermind group for men. And so the one thing led to the other, and at the beginning of I guess it was fall of 2016, I launched the Stretched Men Group. And it's basically a place where men can come, and I teach them for 10 or 15 minutes at the start of our biweekly call. Mm-hmm. And it's usually a topic that helps encourage them to be stronger leaders, or to be better fathers, or to be better husbands, kind of in those areas. And then after that, we put one of the attendees, one of the participants, on the hot seat. And they know that they're going to be on the hot seat, so it's not a surprise. But we give them an opportunity to bring a topic that they're struggling with or they need advice on to the group of men who are part of the call. And they have the opportunity then to work that out. By the end of the call, they usually have an action item that they're going to try to implement before we meet again. Mm-hmm. And I think men are an interesting group. I think sometimes men don't always like the opportunity, that kind of opportunity to be together, or that vulnerability. But in reality, I think that a lot of them deep down inside know that they need some sort of accountability, and they want some place it's unbiased and a little bit neutral to the rest of their lives, where mm-hmm. they can talk through some of the things that are going on inside them. As an example of some of the things that we've seen through the group so far, and we meet for semesters, so we meet for 3 months at a time, and then you have the chance to take a break and then jump back in for the next semester, or to step away for a semester, mm-hmm. or whatever. I mean, it's just a 3-month commitment when you sign up. But I've seen men who have taken huge strides in their faith journeys right. as a result of the group. I've seen men who have made huge decisions and taken big steps in their journeys related to their career, and mm-hmm. also related to some of the ministry opportunities that they've been considering. And the group goes back to that passage in Hebrews about not giving up meeting together, but spurring each other on. And I think that the Stretched Men Group is a place where people can, men obviously, can be stretched in their faith and in how they're living their lives. And it's just been a humbling and an amazing experience to sit there and be a facilitator, but also a spectator as these men are making these big transformations in their lives. It's really an honor and privilege to be part of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of making a difference in others' lives, Guatemala, the dream of building 100+ homes. How did that idea come about, or why did you choose 100 as opposed to maybe 25 or 50 homes?
That is a great question. So the first time I went to Guatemala, just a little backstory, I was afraid. I mentioned to you about the leap of faith decision to go. But when I finally made the decision to go, I had to do some fundraising. And I did that through my blog. And when I posted about the trip, for some reason I felt like I was supposed to ask for something more. And I didn't know what that was going to be for, but I said, hey, I think it was $1,250 to go on the trip. But for some reason I think that I'm supposed to ask for $5,000 in addition to that to do something bigger. Mm-hmm. And within 6 hours of posting that information on my blog, I got a call from a college friend who I hadn't talked to in 15 years. And he said, John, I just read your post, and my wife and I have been praying about an opportunity to get involved somewhere with something overseas like this, and we want to pay for that entire amount. Wow. So they paid for that $5,000 plus the fee for me to go on the trip, and I was the wind got knocked out of me. It was just an amazing experience. It's like, whoa, I didn't expect God to show up like that. So I called the guy who was in charge of the trip, and I said, Adam, this is what's happened. And he said, wow, well, we're going to be able to build a house because of what you just did, or what that family just did. And I was like, okay. So on the trip, we got to build a house that was funded through my blog. And the experience was surreal. I love building with my hands. I don't get to do that as a manager in this construction company I work for. But when I do, there's something that is really fulfilling in that. And when we finished that house and dedicated it and turned it over to the family, there was something dramatic that changed in me. There was something that just said, you know what, this is where you're supposed to be, at least for part of your life. Your passion and your purpose is to help others, and specifically toward getting them some housing. And the house was not all that elaborate. I tell people that it was probably about the size of my family room at home. But for this family, it meant the world to them.
Right.
And the following year, I ended up going back with my family. I said, let's go. I want to invite you to be part of this and see what I got to experience. And that next year, my wife and my kids fell in love with the place. And then we went back the following year and built a couple of homes that, again, we fundraised for and made happen. And then God showed up again in 2016 when we went back, and we planned to build 2 houses, but somehow God had it in store for us to build 3 houses. And it was kind of along that journey. I was reading the book, the Pencils of Promise book by Adam Braun, and he built schools overseas through fundraising and through some of the things that he does. And I just realized that, you know what, maybe I'm not supposed to build 1,000 schools or whatever Adam Braun is doing, but what about 100 houses? That seems like a pretty big number. That can only happen through God. But, we're 93 down, we're 7 down and 93 to go. But somehow I know that God's going to work upstream, and I'm excited for that.
That's right. Our faith allows for us to stretch ourselves to believe what other people would doubt, and I'm going to believe with you that you're definitely going to get that done. Now, I know that we are in the last few minutes of the show today, but I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to talk about your book, about Rooftop Reflections. Can you tell us what is that about?
Yeah, so Rooftop Reflections was written primarily on that trip in 2016 when my wife and my kids and I went to Guatemala for 2 weeks. And this was our fourth trip to Guatemala. But because we were there for 2 weeks, it gave me more opportunity to write and reflect, as we talked about earlier. And the book tells a lot of the day-to-day details of our trips. Our trip that year, but it also shares a lot of the reflections that I had as a result of the experience there. It talks about my dreams of building 100 houses and kind of shares more of how that vision came up and some of the things that I'm doing to go after that goal and that target. The book has really had a big impact on me and on some of the people who have had a chance to read it already. One of my good friends who got a hold of the book said to me that whether you're half a world away or right next door, this is the book that you need to read if you really want to help your neighbors. Right. And if I can encourage people and stretch people to help others as a result of this book, then I think that I've done my job. But I'm also obviously hoping that it may be a catalyst to get people involved with my vision of building 100 houses. And maybe it means that people will step up and contribute to making that happen financially. I certainly hope it will encourage people to pray, not just for our vision to build 100 homes, but really for the families who need those homes and the impact that those homes and those people will have on their community there in Guatemala. Yeah. So it's one of those things. It's writing a book is a labor of love, and I'm thankful that I've had the opportunity to do it. I'm excited to see what the impact of that book will be as it continues to grow and gain readership. There is a website for the book if you want to find out a little bit more information. It's rooftopreflections.com. You can also order the book on Amazon.com. And I'd love to connect with anybody who wants to talk more in depth about it. I'm certainly welcoming opportunities to speak about Guatemala or to just talk one-on-one and share some of what God is doing in my thought process and in our family as we pursue this dream.
Yeah. Well, John, before we conclude this particular show, I want to make sure that everyone is able to contact you. Perhaps they came on a little bit later in the show with everything that you were talking about with the book. You gave your website for that, but they may also be interested in the men's group that you have as well. How should people get in contact with you?
So if they're interested in the men's group, I would encourage you to go to stretchtomengroup.com, and I'm always accepting names for the next semester, so there's a place where you can sign in there and just drop your first name and your email address. You're not signing up or committing to anything, but that will allow me to connect with you, and I'd love to set up a call where we can talk one-on-one and see if it's the right fit. You can certainly go to rooftopreflections.com to learn more about the book. And then I'd encourage you, if you just want to connect with me on a more general basis, to go to john-stolpe.com. There's a couple of different places there where you can connect with me. I'm also available on Facebook if you just look up John Stolpe. And those are some good places. I love being able to be part of this broader community, this broader faith community, and to be able to connect with people not just in Pennsylvania and Atlanta, but wherever I can to extend that community and to be stretched personally, but also to stretch others.
Yes. John Stolpe, thank you so much for being on Daily Spark today. We really enjoyed having you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Keep stretching.
And listeners, I hope that you will indeed keep stretching until we are on next week. I will see you next Monday, 10 a.m. And as always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.